As the dark music built, flashes of armed trucks exploded across the screen. Sirens wailed in the background, while CCTV clips showed masked men with rifles storming armed vans. South Africa had seen many robberies, but one man turned it into a full-scale war. His name was Wellington "BB" Chinenda. Police say he led a syndicate linked to over 20 high-level cash-and-transit heists. These weren't random hits. They were well-planned attacks across 4 provinces. He became the most wanted man in the country. For years, his name was only whispered in the underworld. He slipped through police traps, stayed one step ahead, and vanished, like smoke. He had no known address, no digital trail, and no confirmed photo. The media called him the Ghost, and for good reason. Behind the scenes, law enforcement was breaking. They had bodies, stolen millions, and burned wrecks, but no man to charge. He had turned cash robberies into a deadly business. Ordinary citizens lived in fear, and officers knew any heist could end in blood. Then it happened. In the quiet streets of Bloemfontein, police made their move. A late-night raid ended the chase. They found him, alive, hiding in plain sight. This is how Wellington Chinenda, Africa's biggest heist boss, finally met his end. Wellington Chinenda didn't start as a big name. Like many street criminals, he likely began with small-time thefts and petty crimes, but something in him wanted more power, more money, more control. By the time police noticed his name, he was already deep into armed robbery. He moved in silence, never leaving a clear trace. He built his syndicate slowly. First, it was low-risk jobs, quick hits on stores or light armed routes. Then his team grew bolder, targeting vans with heavier loads and tighter security. Each job showed more planning, more firepower, more nerve. He wasn't stealing, he was waging war. Soon, he was no longer a common thief. He was leading high-level raids with military-style tactics. Convoys were ambushed, guards shot, roads blocked, and millions vanished in minutes. His crew acted fast and disappeared faster. Police were always 2 steps too late. By 2016, law enforcement knew his name well. He had been linked to a shootout with police. 3 gang members were killed, but Chinenda slipped away. Since then, they called him the Ghost. He had no online footprint, no personal records, and no clear photo. He was everywhere and nowhere at once. His network spread across Gauteng, Limpopo, Northwest, and Mpumalanga. Armed trucks were being hit with deadly force in broad daylight. Each province saw the same pattern: fast ambushes, burned getaway cars, and 0 suspects caught. Police knew it had to be one syndicate, but still, Chinenda stayed in the wind. As the robberies stacked up, so did the pressure. Millions in stolen cash. Dozens of guards injured or dead. The public demanded action. Yet every time Chinenda slipped through, the Ghost remained untouchable. But no criminal runs forever, and deep in the shadows, the net was finally tightening. The robberies weren't just thefts. They were full-on military attacks. One moment, a quiet street. The next, bullets tearing through air, roads blocked with burning cars, and guards bleeding on the ground. These weren't desperate crimes. They were strategic assaults carried out with chilling accuracy. In one heist outside Polokwane, 2 vans were surrounded. Attackers boxed them in with hijacked trucks. Within seconds, men with AK-47s opened fire. Guards were pulled from the vehicles, while explosives ripped the doors open. Millions were taken, no trace left behind. In another hit near Rustenburg, the gang stopped traffic on a highway using spikes and burning tires. Civilians ducked for cover as the gang moved like soldiers. They knew how much time they had before police arrived. They were fast, brutal, and gone in under 5 minutes. Witnesses stood frozen in fear. Each robbery was worse than the last. At times, it felt like war had broken out in the streets. Videos began to surface, explosions, screams, and masked men moving with precision. Security companies scrambled to update protocols. Still, nothing worked against this level of planning. The syndicate used encrypted radios, stolen police uniforms, and lookouts on highways. They knew which trucks carried big cash drops. Sometimes, they even knew the guard's name. Police believed insiders were leaking information, but no one would talk, and no one could be trusted. As bodies piled up, fear spread. Guards refused to take certain routes. Families begged loved ones to quit the job. News reports called it a national emergency. The streets of Johannesburg, Pretoria, and beyond felt like battlegrounds. One heist outside Witbank turned into a bloodbath. The convoy was ambushed. Guards fought back, but they were outgunned. By the end, 3 guards were dead. The robbers vanished with over 10 million rands. Police forces across provinces joined hands. Task teams were formed. Helicopters were deployed. But every trail went cold. The Ghost and his gang stayed invisible. They left no fingerprints, Cars were torched, weapons vanished, and witnesses were too scared to speak. CCTV cameras showed shadows. Every case ended with questions. The syndicate left fear, not clues. The people lost faith. Law enforcement seemed powerless. Each headline carried another nightmare. Robbery in Limpopo. Heist turns deadly in Mpumalanga. Millions stolen again. Parents feared school runs. Shops closed early. South Africa was under siege. Investigators knew it was one hand behind all of it. One man who called the shot. Wellington Shenenda wasn't just a thief. He was an architect of terror, and his empire was expanding. With each job, the gang grew bolder. More money, more weapons, more deaths. But with every heist, the pressure grew. The ghost had stirred up a storm, and storms don't last forever. In 2016, a special task team tracked down a convoy linked to Wellington Shenenda's crew in Mpumalanga. It was early morning when unmarked police vehicles surrounded a dusty road near the outskirts of a small town. They thought this was it, a clean takedown, but they were wrong. The air turned to fire in seconds. Guns cracked from both sides. The convoy didn't surrender. They fought back. Inside the first van, shooters unleashed bullets through windows, hitting a police car. Officers ducked and returned fire, crawling for cover behind rocks and trees. Smoke filled the scene as explosions rattled the ground. 3 gang members were gunned down in the chaos. Their rifles and pistols were later found near their bodies. One tried to escape into nearby fields but collapsed from a chest wound. The others kept They fought until the last bullet. As backup units rushed in, a police vehicle flipped during high-speed pursuit. An officer lost control on a sharp bend and crashed. He didn't survive. The death shook the unit, and the raid was cut short. Wellington Shenenda had vanished. He'd been there in one of the vehicles that got away. Witnesses later confirmed seeing a man matching his description jump into a white Toyota and disappear down a gravel road. That car was found burned the next morning. No prints, no bodies. This wasn't just another failed sting. It was the first time police came face-to-face with Shenenda's brutality. He didn't just escape. He made a statement. The message was loud and clear. Catching him would not come without blood. National Police Headquarters issued multiple arrest warrants. Task forces expanded. His face appeared on wanted posters across provinces. Underworld informants were quietly approached. Everyone was hunting the ghost. But Shenenda thrived on chaos. Every move police made seemed predicted. Surveillance cameras were dodged. Phone signals disappeared. Anyone who came close hit a dead end. He was always ahead. The 2016 turned him into public enemy number 1. But to his followers, it made him a legend. The man who faced an entire unit and vanished. The war wasn't over. It had only begun. After the 2016 Wellington Shenenda vanished. Police believed he was wounded, but no hospitals reported him. Crime intelligence teams picked up whispers, fake documents, bribes, and threats kept him hidden. He changed hideouts like clockwork. 1 week in Gauteng, the next in a safe house deep in Limpopo bushland. He left no digital trail, no phones, no online records. He used burner devices that were switched off after one call. Vehicles were stolen, repainted, and dumped. Every escape looked planned months ahead. SAPs grew desperate. They partnered with the Hawks, pushing joint task teams across all 4 affected provinces. Investigators sat through hours of CCTV, tracking cash vans, watching intersections, mapping possible routes. It was like chasing wind. Each time police closed in, he vanished again. He knew the back roads, the river paths, even cattle tracks no one else used. Informants gave tips that led nowhere or were planted on purpose. It was mental warfare, and Shenenda was winning. The heat intensified. In 2023, more gang members were caught. Some gave up details, small ones, but nothing that led to him. He kept moving, even living in truck depots, game lodges, and abandoned farms. He trusted no one for too long. His empire was cracking, but his ghost stayed free. By early 2024, authorities changed tactics. The Minister of Police made a public announcement. He called Shenenda a threat to national safety and urged citizens to help. His face was released to the media. It flooded television, social media, and radio. Billboards went up in crime hotspots. The move worked. Tip-offs increased. One caller claimed they saw a man matching his description in Free State. Another spoke of a compound with strange security in Bloemfontein. Investigators didn't rush. They watched, waited, studied the movement. Police now believed Shenenda had scaled down. He was no longer moving daily. His trusted crew was gone. He stayed in one location longer than usual. It was the crack they needed. Surveillance teams closed in. Heat maps showed activity at the suspected hideout only at night. A final plan was made. By mid-2024, the noose was tightening. But no one could predict where the final chapter would unfold. It was a cold night in Bloemfontein when everything changed. A tip reached crime intelligence, short, quiet, and specific. A man matching Shenenda's profile was seen entering a house in a quiet neighborhood just before midnight. Cameras had no view. The walls were high, but something about the movement felt off. Too cautious, too secret. The Hawks moved first, calling in SAPs and the tactical response team. They didn't want a repeat of 2016. This time, there would be no firefight, no chaos, just a clean grab. The house was placed under full surveillance. Lights went on and off in patterns. No one entered or left for hours. Then, just after 3 a.m., the order came. Go. The team moved in silence. No sirens, no shouting. Doors were breached, drawn. Inside, 4 people were found, 2 men, 2 women. None fought back. In the far room, lying low under blankets, was Wellington Shenenda. He didn't say a word, not when they cuffed him, not when they read his rights. He looked straight ahead, cold, calm, caught. Outside, the streets stayed quiet. Locals only found out later. Police loaded him into a black van and moved fast. He was taken under heavy guard out of Bloemfontein and straight to Pretoria for identity confirmation. Fingerprints matched, face matched. Africa's most wanted man was finally in custody, but Pretoria was only a stop. Within 24 hours, Shenenda was flown to Mpumalanga. There, the 2016 warrant waited. Charges for attempted robbery and more. Officers locked the transport vehicle with extra steel. Snipers watched the sky. They weren't taking chances. The police held a press briefing that same day. One line stood out. We found the suspect in Bloemfontein last night. Crime intelligence-led operation led us to his capture. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted. But there was no doubt the man they chased for nearly a decade was finally behind bars. For South Africa, it was a moment of relief. For law enforcement, it was personal. For Shenenda, it was the end of the run. The ghost had finally been caught. The takedown of Wellington Shenenda did not end with his capture. It opened the door to more arrests and unfinished business from 2016. During that year's operation, 12 suspects were rounded up. 3 died during the shootout. The other 9 went through the system, but the process dragged for years. Out of those 9, 4 have already been sentenced. One of them was a police officer, a trusted insider who fed the syndicate key information. The court handed down stiff penalties, with judges calling the case one of South Africa's darkest examples of internal betrayal. The rest were out on bail, their court appearances delayed and scattered. But now, with Shenenda in custody, the pressure is back on. All remaining suspects were scheduled to appear in Delmas Court on August 20th. It was the first time Shenenda and his old crew faced the justice system together. Security was tight. Media interest was high. The courtroom hosted a case that shaped a decade of fear. The Hawks made one thing clear. They will oppose bail every single time, no matter the excuse. They said anyone connected to Shenenda's syndicate is a danger to society. The fear is not just escape, it's revenge, regrouping, or worse. The stakes were too high to take chances, and it's not over. Investigators believe more members of the network are still active. Some may have gone underground when Shenenda fell. Others might be plotting their exit from the country. Either way, the message is clear. The operation is ongoing. For the public, this trial may feel like closure, but for the law, it's a warning. The syndicate ran deep, used insiders, and left a trail of destruction. Now, the system will try to bring every last piece of it to justice. The courtroom in Delmas is just the next battlefield. Wellington Shenenda's operation was built on layers of secrecy and control. He wasn't the kind of criminal who would show up at crime scenes. Instead, he worked from the shadows, using trusted middlemen to handle the details of each heist. These men communicated with the gang, ensuring that Shenenda's hands stayed clean while the syndicate carried out his orders. His role was to stay hidden, making it harder for police to trace the operation back to him. But his ability to stay in the shadows wasn't the only thing that kept him untouchable. Allegations surfaced about insider help, possibly coming from various sectors. Police, banks, and even logistics firms were said to be compromised. These insiders provided critical information, such as the schedules of trucks or the best locations for attacks. It became clear that Shenenda's reach extended far beyond his gang. Money laundering was another key part of the operation. The stolen millions were washed through a web of illicit channels, making it almost impossible to trace the funds. Banks and businesses, knowingly or unknowingly, were part of the cycle that kept Shenenda's syndicate running smoothly. The level of sophistication suggested that this wasn't just a group of local criminals, but part of a much larger organized crime network. Speculation grew that Shenenda's syndicate was connected to even bigger players, possibly linked to international crime syndicates. As the investigation deepened, authorities started to realize that the scale of the operation was far more complex than anyone had imagined. With every piece of evidence uncovered, the true extent of Shenenda's empire became clearer and more dangerous. The more they uncovered, the more the question lingered. How many people were involved in this web of crime? The arrest of Wellington Chinenda sent a wave of relief through law enforcement agencies across South Africa. For years, he had been a shadow, evading capture while terrorizing the country with his meticulously planned cash-in-transit heists. When the news broke of his capture, Brigadier Mlaudzi took to the airwaves to speak on the operation, praising the collaboration between various law enforcement units, including the Hawks, SAPS, and crime intelligence. He highlighted the exceptional teamwork that led to Chinenda's downfall, noting that it had been a long and difficult journey. This arrest is a result of the hard work of many men and women in law enforcement, Mlaudzi said, emphasizing that the coordinated effort was key to bringing one of South Africa's most notorious criminals to justice. The sense of accomplishment was palpable, and for the first time in years, South Africans felt a glimmer of hope that their safety was being prioritized. The government quickly joined in, with ministers expressing their relief and calling for continued public cooperation. They reminded citizens that the fight against organized crime was not over, urging everyone to remain vigilant and report any suspicious activities. One local community member, reflecting the general sentiment, remarked, "Chinenda's capture is a step in the right direction, but we still have a long way to go." While his arrest was certainly a major milestone, the dismantling of his vast criminal network was expected to take more time and effort. People hoped this was just the first of many breakthroughs, but there was still much to be done. Meanwhile, the media frenzy around Chinenda's arrest only grew stronger as the days passed. The media was fixated on every detail, offering exclusive reports and expert opinions on how Chinenda had managed to evade capture for so long. The public was anxious to know more, with every update about the arrest feeding into the larger story of the manhunt. As his court date approached, the anticipation reached a fever pitch. Chinenda's arrest was just the beginning. His trial promised to expose even more of the inner workings of his operation. South Africa watched with bated breath, awaiting the next chapter in the downfall of its most infamous heist boss. The capture of Wellington Chinenda was a moment many had been waiting for. For years, he had been a figure of fear, the mastermind behind some of South Africa's most daring and violent cash-in-transit heists. Chinenda's arrest is a testament to the power of coordinated efforts between intelligence agencies, the South African Police Service, SAPS, and the public. It wasn't just the police who brought him down, but also the citizens who provided crucial information that helped close in on him. The Hawks, SAPS, and crime intelligence teams worked tirelessly to track his movements, each step bringing them closer to his final capture. It was an operation that required patience, precision, and a unified strategy. And in the end, it paid off. For the first time in years, South Africa could breathe a little easier. But while Chinenda's capture has brought some relief, his arrest doesn't completely erase the damage done by his criminal empire. The question on everyone's mind is, how deep did his network run? His syndicate wasn't just a group of criminals. It was a well-organized, sophisticated operation with connections that reached far beyond the streets. It's unclear how many other members are still out there, continuing the work that Chinenda started. His downfall may have broken the syndicate's spine, but the body of his criminal empire could still be alive and well in the shadows. Chinenda's fall serves as a cautionary tale. His rise to power shows just how dangerous and influential organized crime can be. However, his capture also offers a glimmer of hope, proving that when intelligence, law enforcement, and the public work together, even the most elusive criminals can be caught. But the war on crime isn't over. The real challenge now lies in dismantling the rest of his network and ensuring that others don't follow in his footsteps. Will his arrest be the end of South Africa's cash-in-transit heists, or is it just the beginning of a new chapter? Only time will tell. The corruption of South Africa's police institution enabled Wellington Chinenda to outsmart the law for years, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. From small-time robberies into orchestrating high-level heists that gripped entire provinces, his reign as the leader of one of Africa's most notorious crime syndicates seemed unstoppable. But in the end, his capture in Bloemfontein marked the beginning of the end. Once an invisible mastermind, he now faces the consequences of his actions behind bars. While one criminal kingpin may have fallen, the war on cash-in-transit crime continues. Chinenda's capture is just a chapter in an ongoing battle against criminal syndicates that still threaten South Africa's streets. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next one.